These qualities of lightness and strength are found in gator hide craft board, the ideal material for shipping. Original wood is of the Southland. Here, a great new industry has sprung into being, an industry that has contributed vastly to the development of the South's resources. The mills of Southern Kraft Corporation, world's largest producer of kraft paper and board, are located close to perpetual sources of wood supply. And here at Panama City, Florida, we see the world's largest plant exclusively devoted to the production of Ford Grenier kraft liner board and corrugating materials. A mill that expresses the last word in modern efficiency. Located near the heart of the Florida pine forest, the plant is the industrial nucleus about which thrives a prosperous and growing community. Here, ocean-going vessels find one of the largest and safest harbors on the Gulf of Mexico. Two large docks situated at the plant provide unusual facilities for shipment by water. In the forest near the plant are seen the stately southern long-leaf yellow pine, from which gator hide craft board is made. This fast-growing wood reaches maturity in 16 to 18 years. By planned cutting and natural reforestation, the wood areas surrounding Panama City will furnish a never-ending supply. The mild and pleasant climate, equable through all seasons, makes possible year-round cutting, providing steady employment and avoiding the expensive necessity for storing a large wood supply at the plant. Logs are sawn into 5-foot lengths and stacked in pens. Cutting is paid for on a piece rate basis and is checked by the number of pens a man cuts in a day. The pens are attacked by huskies like these, and it doesn't take long to load one of the big trucks. A steady stream of trucks carries logs directly to the mill from nearby cuttings. From more distant areas, the logs are transported to wharves for loading on barges. the plant wharf can be seen the fleet of barges waiting to be unloaded. On the unloading wharf, a conveyor bridge carries the logs directly into the mill or to the storage yard. Some wood from inland forest areas is shipped to the plant by rail. The bark must be removed before the logs pass into the mill. A conveyor transports them to barking machines. Logs fall into the barking drums in a continuous flow. The bark is removed as the logs rub against each other while tumbling about in the huge drum. After barking, another conveyor carries them to machines where they are sliced into chips. Whirling blades in the great chippers cut the logs into chips about an inch in diameter. From the screens where splinters and larger pieces have been removed, the chips are conveyed to the top of the digester house. Here they spill out on another conveyor which distributes them to large bins. The bins are located directly above the digesters. The digesters are huge cauldrons in which the chips are mixed with chemicals and cooked for several hours to remove pitch, lignin, and other impurities. Every hour or so, one of the digesters is filled. The cover, which has been bolted down securely to seal the top of the digester, is removed. A loading funnel is wheeled into place and everything made ready to charge the digester. The chips pour into the huge cylindrical digester many tons to fill it almost to the brim. A solution of sodium hydroxide and sodium sulfide cooking liquor is now run in by gravity from measuring tanks, filling the digester about 2/3 full. At high pressure is then admitted at the bottom of the digester and forces its way up through the mixture of chips and chemicals. Cooking under pressure takes about 3 hours. During cooking, the wood chips are digested, the chemicals attacking the cementing substances in the wood and freeing the fibers. After cooking has been completed, the steam valves are closed. The discharge valve at the bottom of the digester is opened, and the contents of pulp and spent chemicals are forced out by the pressure remaining in the digester. The pulp and chemicals pass to a cyclone tank, steam escaping up a stack. From the cyclone tank, the pulp is carried by gravity to large washing tanks called diffusers. The spent chemicals, now a dark brown, almost black liquor, are carried away to a recovery plant where resin and other impurities are removed and the liquor reclaimed for use again. After the black liquor has drained away, the pulp is washed for 5 to 6 hours by a steady stream of water. At the end of the washing period, the pulp, from which all traces of cooking liquor have been removed, is discharged from the diffuser into a stock chest conveniently located on the floor below. The pulp passes through a maze of pipes and a forest of pumps to the primary screens, where most of the small undigested portions and nuts are removed. The pulp then goes to secondary screens where remaining nuts are removed. From these screens, the pulp is pumped to beater machines to be mixed and beaten into a workable mixture of pulp and water. Chemicals and sizing materials are added, if required, in the production of special types of four-denier kraft liner board. The pulp remains in the beater for approximately 20 minutes, then is discharged and carried to other machines to be further worked on. But before we follow the pulp to the finishing processes, let us stop for a moment and consider the important part played by the chemist and his laboratory in the modern paper mill. Situated at the very center of the Panama City mill is a real house of magic, though perhaps it seems to its busy chemists a place of ordinary routine. For in this laboratory, the delicate balance of acidity, alkalinity, and many other mysterious determinations are made. For instance, they even check the chlorine content of the water used in the boilers. Another test involves the comparison of chemicals by color examination with standard color samples. In this laboratory, you may see paper making on a miniature scale. Here is a small model of one of the large beaters you saw in the mill. A measured quantity of pulp is removed from the beater. The pulp mixture poured on a screen through which the water drains away. The wet layer of pulp fibers stripped off the screen and placed in a small press that squeezes out most of the remaining water. The sample is then transferred to an electrically heated drying press. Samples from the mill product, as well as specially prepared test pieces, are given many physical tests. Here is one of them, the bending or folding test. The machine plugs away, often for hours before the sample of four-denier kraft liner board breaks apart. Since our time is limited, we can't wait for the completion of this test, so let's move on to another. This is the bursting test. The amount of force required to poke the ball through the paper registers on a dial. The tensile test proves how strong kraft board really is. Here, the test piece raises a heavily weighted arm until the test is torn apart. Again, a high reading shows the strength of kraft. Remember, kraft really means strength. The microscope plays an important part in the laboratory. Examination of kraft pulp made from southern long-leaf yellow pine reveals how long and strong are its fibers. Now let's return to the paper mill itself and follow the further operations in making four-denier kraft board. In the foreground are the beaters which you saw a moment ago. Beyond them stretches a huge room more than a city block in length. As we travel along on our tour of inspection, we pass row after row of odd-looking machines nestling in a tangle of pipes. These are called the Jordan. The pulp passes through these machines in order further to separate the fibers and give the pulp the final treatment to prepare it for the actual board-making processes. The pulp is pumped to a large stock chest at the end of the paper machine. The pulp passes from the stock chest in an accurately regulated stream that flows out over a large wire screen. This screen is called a four-denier wire and consists of an endless belt of fine copper wire screens. The pulp mixture is carried along this rapidly moving belt, and as it passes along, some of the water drains through the screen, a miniature Niagara. thousands of gallons for every ton of board produced. The screen is given a shaking motion sidewise. This is for the purpose of causing the fibers to arrange themselves in an interlocking pattern. Otherwise, they would have a tendency to lie parallel to each other. The diagram illustrates what happens. This weaving together of the fibers contributes greatly to the unusual strength of Kraft container board. The pulp deposits on the four-denier wire belt as a sheet consists of many layers of very wet pulp fibers. As you can see, most of the water has drained away near the end of the belt, but the sheet of pulp still contains a high percentage of moisture. The sheet is then carried over suction rolls, through pressing rolls, over calendering rolls, which impart a smooth surface finish, and then through the drying end of the machine, where it passes along in contact with a great number of steam-heated drying cylinders. As we move along with the sheet, we get a vivid idea of the size of this huge machine. The sheet, now air dry, is taken up on rolls. The sheet passing through the machine is more than 18 feet wide. The men are now preparing to start a new roll, and here is a picture of teamwork, of perfectly timed coordination. Watch closely or you'll miss it. Did you get it? Here is a common sight in the mill. These men are taking samples for testing before the sheet is slit. Samples are taken also after slitting. A double check on every roll of board produced. You remember that we stopped off to visit the plant control laboratory? Well, here is another laboratory located in the mill right alongside the paper machine. Tests and analyses are constant routines necessary to assure quality and afford a definite check on the product throughout every minute of the day. The many tests include calipering for thickness, the Mullen test to determine the bursting point, tests to check on tearing strength, color comparison to assure uniformity of color, porosity tests to determine the density of the material, and many others. The test data are recorded so that the characteristics of each roll are made available in the most minute detail. All day long, these great machines turn out the finest quality of Kraft liner board and corrugating material. Control under the watchful eyes of the scientist maintains this quality at a uniform standard. Of course, rolls of board as long as these would be too bulky for shipment, and besides, no fabricating machines in present use can handle them. So the extremely wide sheet must be slit. Here we see the slitting machine and the preparation for threading the board. The folded over end of the sheet is expertly threaded through and given a few turns on the spooling reel. A long elevator which carries a series of circular knives is let down so that the knives are placed in contact with the sheet. Now as the machine starts, the knives cut through the sheet, the elevator rising as the roll increases in size. It is often necessary to splice the sheets before slitting. Here again we get an idea of the coordination and teamwork so characteristic of the activities of a modern paper mill. It was found that lap-jointed seams offered difficulties in fabricating machines, so the method employed in this mill is to join the sheets together by a tape splice. In juggling the heavy rolls, which may weigh as much as 2 tons. But watch this slender lad give them the works. The rolls of craft board are carefully prepared for shipment. Steel binding tape is placed near the edges to prevent the roll from unwinding. Every roll is weighed and the weight stenciled on its side. This one weighs 2, 6, 8, 4, 2,684 pounds. The rolls are picked up by a hoist and carried to the warehouse to await shipment. In this huge warehouse, as much as 10,000 tons may be stored at one time. But it does not remain here long, for every day or so a large freighter ties up at the plant wharf. Its hold to be filled with massive rolls of four-denier craft board for transportation to container box manufacturers in many parts of the world.
Life on the ocean wave, a home on the rolling deep, when the stars and waters flame, and the winds are a heaven deep. Life on the ocean wave, a home on the rolling deep, when the stars and waters flame, and the winds are a heaven deep.
Now let's follow the rolls of craft board to the plant of a prominent container manufacturer. This large machine, almost a city block in length, is making corrugated board. The operator kindly stops the machine so that we may have an intimate view of the roll that forms the corrugation. The glued corrugations are brought into contact with a sheet of craft liner board. Contact is maintained between the smooth liner board and the corrugated section, and they become firmly joined together. At this point, there is liner board on one side only. We pass on to the next stage where the liner board is glued to the other side of the corrugated section. The board passes along a belt which presses it lightly but firmly together to effect perfect adhesion between the liners and the craft corrugations. Notice the dial in the left corner. It is registering the speed of the machine, 250 feet a minute. Nearly 3 miles of wide board is being produced on this single machine in the course of 1 hour. These are the creasing rolls that form the indentations for folding. Rapidly revolving knives smoothly trim the edges and slit the board into the many widths required. Flying shears cut the boards into required lengths. This machine is making large board for big containers. The same machine can be adjusted to produce a great variety of sizes, from very small sizes to even larger than you see here. Now let's take a close look at a piece of corrugated board. It is built like a truss bridge. Here is strength with top and bottom liners and corrugations of tough gator hide craft board. Strength without excessive weight. Here is a busy operation, printing the board and cutting the slots in one passage through the machine. Rolls carrying various colored inks print the impression of users' names and trademarks. Almost faster than the eye can follow come the printed and completely prepared board ready to be folded and joined into box form. Large containers are usually stitched with wire staples. In the background can be seen large stocks of containers ready for shipment to manufacturers all over the country. This special sewing machine inserts husky wire staples at the control of the operator. The toughness and strength of gator hide craft board is an assurance that the stapled seam will not tear apart under severe handling during shipment. The most frequently used method of joining the board is by taping with gummed paper tape. Every maker of shipping containers must be ready to furnish an infinite variety of sizes. And here you see a row of machines, each of which is handling a different size. With practiced skill, the operators fold the forms and apply the gummed tape. The containers pass along under a belt which presses the moist tape into firm contact. And here they are complete, ready to go places and do their part in moving the goods of commerce. These particular containers, as you can see, are destined to hold a well-known beauty lotion. Let's follow them into the plant of Lane & Fink and catch a glimpse of the product itself.